report. Oh.
Apologies, I meant.
my accent suddenly sounded quite different to what was coming out of what I felt I was saying. Thank you. Now, this is our annual report. We've tried over the last number of years to submit an annual report. It's not an essential item, but we do it because we feel it's a good opportunity to remind ourselves of the terms of reference of the committee, but also just to reflect on the activity that we've undertaken in the previous year. Now, due to lack of meeting over the last year, we didn't submit our report for the previous year. So this report does cover activity for the years 19 through to 20 and into 21. So in summary, it reflects that we did consider a few policy changes over the last couple of years. As members of this committee will know, our approach to HR policies is to review and amend as they are needed, rather than continually looking at a policy and bring something forward that perhaps doesn't really justify or need any review. So there were a few policies that we looked at over the last couple of years, some of which were really tidying up and bringing rates and approaches into line with other parts of the local government sector, particularly the standby policy and the relocation policy. The special leave policy that we looked at in September 20 was in response to some new legislation that the government had brought in April 20 regarding parental bereavement leave. And a couple of times we have looked at apprenticeships. So on one occasion we brought one of our apprentices to the meeting to present to committee, and then in February of this year we brought the apprenticeship strategy, and that's followed up today with the action plan. And also we've brought the gender pay gap data to this committee as well, and clearly there'll be a further paper coming during 21 into 22 for data for 31st of March 2021. And also paragraph 5 again captures the fact that a chief officer appointments panel from this committee has considered some senior officer appointments over the last year as well, starting off with the Deputy Director of Places in February, which then moved on to the Strategic Director, the Chief Exec, and then more recently our 2 Strategic Director posts in the People Directorate. So it's really a paper that, again, that just captures in summary form our activity over the last couple of years, but obviously happy to take any further points or questions.
Any questions or points from members? Okay, can I just pick up? Sorry, sorry, I just saw your hand, Gail, please.
It's been up for a moment or two. Thank you. I think it summarises what we did very well. Thank you, Carol. But I've got one question, and it relates to the terms of reference, which is 2.1 A, the last one, 7 in Roman numerals. And that's the children's services complaints. Can I ask that it's checked that we still have responsibility for this? Because my reading of our policy on children's services complaints is that the appeal will be to an independent panel outside the council, which I think has changed since we last reviewed our terms of reference. So I'd appreciate if that one got checked, please.
That's fine. Yes, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Would it be correct to assume, I'm trying to remember the Constitution, but is this in the Constitution as well, in that detail? I know that the first part is up to appeals, and I suspect that is as well. So that may be a constitutional working group.
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure on that, Gordon.
Yeah, okay. I think, Joe, if we could check that from a constitutional point of view with the monitoring officer.
Yeah, I've made a note of that to check it.
Lovely, thank you. If that is the case, that is now an independent panel, then so we can get that clarified. We don't want 2 policies looking in different directions. So sorry, Gail, thank you for that. Any other points from any other members? I've got just a couple of points. First of all, the gender pay gap. indicative timing for this year's report, the March 21 report, Carol?
Can I check with Joe? Do you have offhand the date of our next meeting? And then I can
Yep, I
give it to hand.
Yeah.
We're usually around a September meeting.
we haven't got one in September. We have got the next one. Sorry, I'm just looking on my calendar, and is it not on the agenda? The next
I
one.
think it is actually.
Let me just check. Sorry. No, it isn't. It appears to have been missed off that September basis. I thought it was a bit later than that. I've got the next one actually in February.
No, yeah, we would
we
normally
need
have
one before
again
then.
later on in the year.
So
Yes, I think we would look at September or October, Chair. So we would endeavour to get it ready for that meeting. Yes,
We have a
we don't
new-
have to officially publish it until next March.
Yeah.
But we'll bring it to the September October meeting once we've got the dates sorted in the calendar. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yes, there's only a meeting planned for July and for February the 8th at this stage in the meetings
Okay.
calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So that will be for the autumn. Let's call it the autumn meeting. And the other point I was going to raise was, has it historically, this report historically been circulated direct to councillors as against it being just part of a meeting agenda programme, you know, the agenda documentation? So I'm just wondering whether there's any benefit in this report being circulated to councillors with just a covering note from the committee, just saying, you know, please note the work that the committee has done, because I think this committee is a unsung hero of the committees that we hold. It has a lack of presence, I think is the word I'd use. Views of the committee on that one? Gail?
I wouldn't use presence, I'd use profile, but yes, I agree with you. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't send it out as a note, or indeed for you as chairman to speak on it at our next council meeting under the standing item that we have of reports from committees.
Excellent idea. That's a very good time to do it. Happy with that, Oliver?
Yes.
Clearly, he
Okay.
just put his thumb up.
Excellent. So if everyone's happy with that, we'll do that at the September normal council meeting. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Carol. Moving on to the next item. Item 8, Employment and Appeals Committee. Again, I think, Carol, you want to take this and just update us on the strategy and the action plan.
Okay, yes, thank you. This is the apprenticeship action plan. So as I said before, members approved a strategy document in February 21. So this paper and the appendix presents an action plan that will enable us to deliver against that strategy. A couple of key points. We are in fact on target in terms of our levy target for 21-22, but as previously reported, the last 2 years have been much more of a challenge, and that's a similar pattern to other local authorities. We are seeing the main level of interest across services within our people directorate. Now you might say, well, that's the largest directorate, so proportionally that's going to be the case. The point I think I want to make there is, obviously we will continue to look at developments of apprentices across the organisation. So we're not just using the opportunity that we have quite an uptake within that particular service area as saying, well, our job is almost done. One of, again, a key focus for us that you'll see in the action plan is around providing some wraparound support for our apprentices, for our learners, whether they're apprentices or whether they're existing staff undertaking an apprenticeship standard. So we will be putting in place a peer support group. some support for managers of individuals who are undertaking an apprenticeship standard, and some direct support from the HR team as well. So the sort of standards that we've got people studying at the moment are quite broad, although number-wise, as I said before, they are primarily within our adult social care service, particularly for our care support workers in community support. But of interest, we've got 2 individuals now doing chartered surveyor programs, which, as you know, they are very hard to recruit to service areas. So pursuing that as a way of recruiting and retaining is absolutely perfect for us. So great opportunity for those 2 individuals. We have, again, a couple of people doing a social worker degree, as I said, as well as those doing a level 2 program in adult social care. A new program for us this year will be somebody doing a data analysis program, which would be quite an interesting one for that individual to pursue. And we have one in HR as well. We have a new HR trainee who will be doing her CIPD level 5 through this year. So quite broad in that respect, in terms of, you know, something very specific around chartered surveying, something very frontline in terms of adult social care, and something a little bit more technical in terms of data analysis and some HR thrown in there as well. So it's quite a good breadth. As I said, the appendix shows the action plan that we have put together. We have a new HR manager who's joined us this week. She was hoping to be at this meeting this evening, but unfortunately she's caught up in house moving to Oakham, of course, and she was a little bit strapped for when her current buyer wanted to come around and visit. So she does send her apologies. She would really like this opportunity to come and say hello. But one of her responsibilities will be to take forward the action plan. And the focus for the second quarter of the year is to really get behind this care leavers network that we've talked about before. We were very keen to see some commitment to Rutland care leavers through apprenticeship programs. So we will start developing that network. We've already done some ground rules. We need to move that on a little bit. We need to do some sharing, knowledge, awareness raising. So we're putting together some case studies of the good apprentices that we've had over the last couple of years, and we'll use those across the organisation to promote the benefits and how you can go through an apprentice. And as I said, the peer support group will be significant for us too. So we do feel it's a deliverable action plan. I think, as we've said before, there's an element of pragmatism for Rutland and doing something that's right in the context of Rutland, our size and our capacity, rather than driving the apprenticeship levy as our prime focus and target. Obviously, we don't want to lose money from the levy pot. Our finance team work closely with us to monitor our expenditure out of that pot. But for us, it's always been about apprentices and standards being an integral part of how we can grow and develop staff and bring apprentices into the organisation as well. So last year was a disappointment, as we discussed before. So I think we can go into the next phase of this year with the action plan with a little bit more confidence. Again, happy to take any further comments or questions.
Sam.
Thank you, Chair. My question, and it's probably a bit two-pronged, so and it could just be that I've missed the point somewhere. I'm slightly, whilst it's fantastic that we're doing, that we've got the action plan and everything, I'm slightly confused around ages and our meaning of apprenticeships, and I wonder whether any of these are. So what I'm trying to say is, previously we would staff would have had ongoing training and that sort of thing, and we would have done staff development, and that wouldn't have been packaged up maybe as an apprenticeship. And when we talk about apprenticeships, we tend to think of upskilling either young people or people that are coming back into the market, into work and things. And I can't see on this how we're differentiating between the two, and whether there might be some blurring in order, because I appreciate there's funding attached to this. So how do we protect and to kind of reassure that we are upskilling and bringing in apprenticeships and upskilling people that are coming in new or coming back to the workplace, as opposed to just what would previously have been training people in job kind of thing. Does that kind of make sense, what I was trying to say?
Yes, I believe it does. Yeah, and I think, you know, if I look at the list of individuals we have as potential starts for this year, you know, they are all existing staff who will be undertaking what would previously have been a professional qualification through day release, college, self-study, but now undertake it the apprentice standard. So they're counted towards our apprentice starts. So they're not the traditional apprenticeship type of roles where we might look to bring in, as you said, somebody new out of school or college that's looking to gain qualifications and work experience, or again, somebody who wants to come back into the workplace and needs to and wants to undertake some further study. As we said before, our experience of apprentices, real apprenticeships that we took on last year, you know, in a pandemic year when people were primarily not at work and there was restrictions in terms of services and what we were doing, that wasn't the best environment to bring those individuals into. So in terms of the levy and the expenditure, it doesn't matter whether they are an existing member staff or an apprentice coming in on a you know, £3.90 an hour type of role. From our point of view as an organisation, we really want a blend of both, because we do want to be bringing in new people and upskilling them and helping them grow in their career. But I think that those particular opportunities and those roles, we need to be more cautious about how we identify them and where we place them so that we get it right. Because, you know, giving a good experience and a good opportunity to somebody is vital. And we need to have the right climate and the right environment, the right wraparound support for them in order to come in and do an apprentice programme. You know, they're fixed term contracts, although obviously, you know, you want to be able to guarantee them a position at the end. The HR trainee that I mentioned, that is a fixed term contract because she's aligned to completion of her CIPD level 5, but she's not an apprentice as such on £3.90 or whatever it is an hour, or she might get £6 something. I've recruited her into a post, although it's a fixed term post, aligned to completion of her studies, and then we would hope to place her at the end of that programme. So I think it's trying to get a blend of both, Councillor Harvey, to be honest. I think we just need to look more cautiously about the apprenticeships.
Does that answer your question, Sam?
It does. Can I come back slightly with a slight challenge towards it, and to the, I suppose it would be a challenge to the policy and to the strategy then, thinking about our care leavers particularly. If we're wanting to champion our care leavers and our other young people, how might this, if this strategy and the action plan is looking at those people that are already skilled and are developing skills, whilst that's fantastic, how within our strategy can we utilise it to bring on our young people and actually support our young people into it? Because that is very, very different, and it's a completely different support system to someone who is established and has high quality qualifications. Young people and care leavers at the lower end of their work journey have there is completely different expectations and a completely different support network is required around them, specifically around care leavers who have maybe come from more chaotic lifestyles and take longer to adjust. And I'm sure that's shared by neighbouring authorities' experience in that. So I just think we need to maybe have a bit more of a think of that, because we don't want to set them up to fail.
Yeah. Is that covered under the target of target 3, Carol, that you are looking to not just promote, but to guarantee that they have interviews for specific vacancies?
I think in part, but I think what Councillor Harvey is talking about is something perhaps a bit more explicit and a little bit more driven than the words perhaps are indicating. And also, I think elsewhere in here, when we talk about, documentation, advice and guidance, I think there's something in there that refers more specifically to perhaps both entry routes, if you like, in terms of we're not just promoting it for existing staff. That is important, but also is how we work with managers so that they understand where they can and should look for opportunities for positions and roles to be true apprenticeship positions. I think you're right, we can be more explicit about that. I would say the intent has been there, but you're right, it's not as explicit as I think you would like to see. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Gail, you were next.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few comments and one question, so I'll do all the comments first, if I may. The first is that I'm very pleased that we are looking specifically at our care leavers, but I do pick up Councillor Harvey's points about the difficulties that cohort face. And I do wonder whether your Q3 target in the annex, number 11, the Manager Support Toolkit, whether it might help in terms of that group if that target was brought forward to earlier in the programme. So that's one of my observations. My second observation is around the successful apprentice. I noted that they will be presenting and we'll be celebrating them, and they'll be presenting to the senior management team. If we are running successful apprenticeship programme, whether for current staff or staff on our books, if you like, or people new to Rutland County Council, in either case, it's actually something we should be shouting about more widely and should be seen as a recruitment tool, because it tells you something about the culture within Rutland. And to that end, I wonder if we could be putting a few videos together to go on our website, so that when people from outside are applying to us, we can point them in that direction and say, look, here's an example of what happens here. So that's just a thought. I'm sure our comms team would be up to doing that. It doesn't have to be uber sophisticated, does it? I mean, it's not like it's going on TikTok or something. And my third is actually a question, and it relates to the Q3 targets, number 9, work with local schools and colleges, etc. Are we talking about schools in Rutland, or are we and colleges, obviously, or are we talking more widely to the institutions where Rutland children go? So I'm thinking places like Bourne Grammar, King's School in Peterborough, and so on and so forth, because I think we should be looking more widely to where our young people go as part of our drive to help more young people stay within Rutland. And even if at the more exalted institutions like Bourne Grammar, 98% of the young people go off and do a degree, or whatever the figure might be this week, if they've had some exposure to what we're offering, it might make them think, oh, well, that might be somewhere I'd go and work when I finished. So that's my question, which schools and colleges, basically. Thank you.
Carol.
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant point, Councillor Wallace. I think we do tend to just focus on Rutland schools, but actually, as you say, we have relationships, and our young people of Rutland don't just attend Rutland schools. So yes, I'll ensure that that's covered in that paragraph. We have very good links with Stamford College as an example. I mean, they actually do our functional skills training for individuals who need to do some functional skills upskilling before they do an apprenticeship standard. So we are already working outside in terms of our standards, similarly with Peterborough colleges as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Rosemary.
Thank you. It was really just to follow up on Sam's point a bit when we're talking about the what I'm going to call entry apprenticeships, which is great promoting and everything, but they can only come to us if there are actually vacancies that we're recruiting to. And I noticed that you put managers on point 7 in Q2, managers to apply scrutiny of vacancies at the approval stage to assess whether roles can be entry-level apprenticeship roles, etc., which is great. But I'm just wondering if there's a bit more proactive stuff, because I mean, I don't know how much an apprentice costs us, and that's obviously a consideration. But in terms of actually, it's not just our normal recruitment and the roles that we have, but actually thinking of where an apprentice would also add value and create an opportunity for somebody coming in. Obviously, budgetary costs have to be applied, but I just wonder whether we are doing enough to actually creatively think of where apprentices can be enhance the services of the council and also help individuals to get that first step into work. And also, I wondered how many have we got any recruitment for those apprentices at the moment, or have we got any planned over the next year, for example?
We don't currently have any adverts out for apprentices in terms of entry level. There are a couple of areas we need to revisit that where we did have them last year, but as we said before, we're not that successful. So there is, we do need to look at the type of qualification and process that it provides, so that it does present a really good opportunity for somebody. Just of interest in terms when you were talking about, scope to create opportunities for people to come in and do something of real value, accepting that we need to fund those. And obviously with apprentices, we do have to fund the salary. But just as an example, you'll be aware of the Kickstart programme that the government brought in over the last few months. We've currently made 3 offers to individuals on that programme, and that is predominantly funded. And for those, we have been able to find those opportunities to give these people a chance to come in, gain some real experience and do some really good value work. So Roger Ranson has appointed one to work on some of the climate change stuff. So I think there is that scope there, because we've been able to do it. We've done it for the Kickstart programme. So accepting that they are funded. But I think it does demonstrate that actually when we go out there and look at where could we create an opportunity, where we need some real business focus work done, where it presents a great opportunity for somebody to come in and contribute and learn some great skills. So clearly that is an opportunity there. And again, I think we can reflect that in paragraph number 7, that as you say, it's not just about assessing vacancies, but actually taking the opportunity to make an assessment when we have a need for something that actually, again, apprentices, an apprentice could offer another opportunity or route to undertake that piece of work.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask whether we could have a report in, say, a year's time about the Kickstart programme, the effectiveness of it, perhaps tied in with an update on apprenticeships more generally, Chairman.
Yes, I'm looking at Carol.
Oh yes, that's fine. Yes.
I presume that would be okay. Yes, as part of an ongoing review of apprentices and young starters, I think is the key point there.
Yeah.
Any other questions at this stage? Can I just come back to a point you made right at the beginning, Carol, and that was the levy target and the question: what is the size of the pot? How many apprentices does that help, and to what extent is are apprentices funded? To what degree are apprentices funded?
Yeah.
Rough figures. I'm not looking for
Oh.
absolute numbers, but just so
We-
that members understand the sort of numbers we're talking about.
Okay, well, currently the balance in the pot is 80,000.
Yeah.
But it's quite a complicated process because it's drawn, we put money in each year and then you draw out money depending on when people start. So Laura in finance does a very nice process for us, thank heavens, in terms of plotting what we have going out each month and at what year. So she would be able to trigger if we were either not going to be utilising the pot or if we were going over the pot. So my current figure is she tells me we've got a balance in there of 79,000. I've spoken to her recently about a couple of apprentices that apprenticeship programs that are interested for some people. And she says, you know, in terms of our management of the pot and where we're at, it's absolutely fine. So we are not at the risk currently of losing any money out of the pot.
Good, okay. And the levy is a levy on the payroll, I seem to remember.
Yes, yeah. So it's money that comes straight out of our budget,
Yeah.
and it pays for the qualification itself. It doesn't pay for apprenticeship salaries.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and the apprenticeship standards are very expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive. This is not a least expensive way of providing somebody with a professional training route.
But it is a benefit, particularly, I recognise the point that both Sam and Gail have made about starters and particularly care leavers, but as a way to attract and retain high quality middle staff,
Yes.
particularly technical staff, where
Yes.
we can take them on and train them. I know Roger's done some work on that and with his graduate
Yes.
program. That's been very
Yeah.
helpful
Yeah,
in building
yeah.
some quality in his department.
Yeah, it is a true investment. There is no doubt about that. You know, this isn't, as I say, a least expensive way of getting through some training and skills, and that's why we need to be really diligent about who we do accept onto a program.
Rosemary, I noticed your hand was up.
I think I put it down. I was just going to ask, following on from that, are there not extra incentives to hire apprentices at the moment, or does that not apply to us?
There has been some incentives, but they haven't applied to any of ours at this point in time because, again, we've not had the entry apprentices route. We've had the programs that we're supporting our current apprentice standards for existing staff.
Okay, but if we had recruited,
They will have been able to access some of those.
Funding
Yeah.
to offset the costs. Well, yeah, I think we should also be looking at reviewing that.
Yeah, some of them, they don't cover the full cost of the programs. They're nowhere near it meeting those costs, but it is a contribution. Some of them are 500, some of them are 1,000. Yeah.
I thought it was 3,000, but I might be wrong. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sam.
Thanks, Chair. Just one other thing. I fully appreciate and actually, as you said, Gordon, especially around our technical sides, being able to upskill our current employees is fantastic. I just do think within Rutland, we're fully aware, and especially with regard to all our kind of the reports that have come out, we know that we want to try and keep people employed locally, and obviously we are one of the biggest employers in the county, and it just seems a shame that we can't focus on we can't bring in entry as well. I just think we do miss out for all of our young people if we can't bring in entry level. There isn't within Rutland, there isn't much opportunity for entry level apprenticeships, and a lot of them are outside county or require transport to more rural areas, which can be particularly challenging, as we know, for our young people.
I think, Carol, you can comment on that, but we have had entry-level apprentices before.
Yes, we have. Yes. I said we had. That's right. We had 3 last year, but unfortunately they didn't make it through the year in terms of their studies.
And I think that's two sides of it. I think the support mechanism that's been looked at in the action plan is very important, that we not only just employ young apprentices at the entry level, but we support them through that
Yes,
process and
exactly.
understand
Yeah.
the difficulties they may have during their first year in particular, studying, working and enjoying life.
Yeah, it needs to be the right service, the right role, for the right individual. So, just having one in a particular service area that then, isn't successful is obviously disappointing. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. I'm just recognising the time, and I'm happy to extend the meeting after 9:30 if we need to. But I'm sure that one or two people might want to leave earlier than that. So shall we move on to the next item and take that one at this stage, because it's an important item. I think it's important we get onto it. Future ways of working, a hybrid model. Carol, would you like to introduce this report and where we're going with it?
Yes, thank you. So this paper is to introduce you to our current thinking and direction of travel as we hopefully move out of further COVID restrictions, and we start to see our scope to work in the office increase again. For us, as you know, we're looking more towards October due to the fact the building is still partly signed over to a vaccination centre, so we don't currently have the whole building available to us. As with many organisations, private and public sector, we've taken the opportunity to reflect how the last 18 months has been in terms of working from home in the most. For some it's been okay, for some not so okay. I think, we're certainly not of the view that it's been a perfect solution for everybody, and for some it's been less so. And I think, we are still learning and working our way through. And certainly we don't feel we're at the stage where we could or should commit to a prescribed model post October. We've also been doing lots of research, and I've indicated some of that in the paper, and liaison across our networks. It's always useful to see and hear what others are planning, what they've done, what their intentions are. But again, for us, we need to apply the Rutland context. It needs to be right for our organisation, our services, our teams and our members. As with many employers, the use of working from home pre-pandemic was not that widespread. It was done occasionally. Certainly external research and models now are identifying that trend is very likely to reverse, and what people describe as the new norm or way of working is becoming known, as this hybrid model, which is a combination of working from home and in the workplace. So we have been exploring this model and tracking and seeing what research is showing and how it may work for us. The point I would emphasise, and I hope comes out strongly in the paper, is that the key message is this is service and business need first and is paramount. This is not about employees' personal preferences and choices, nor is it the choice of the manager. So our current planning is that we're looking to enable the building to be workable again, certainly by October. So property and premises are working to put things back to how they were. Those, therefore, that can, need to, or prefer to go back into the office and work will be able to do so. For those services where a hybrid model could work for the service, then we'll give it a go over a period of time. And that means we would need in place proper equipment in the way that we have already. In fact, DSC, display screen equipment, risk assessments, and appropriate ways of working. We're looking to enable teams to work through something like a team charter or agreement that enables them to work through and check and challenge what their service needs is as the paramount, and then how could that team continue to work in a hybrid way. So they would be able to evidence through their own internal dialogues how they would make this work, so that everybody in the team is very clear what they are working to. So, as I said, we would then move into a period of time when we are seeing how we can make this work for the organisation. We will keep that under review, particularly from a service perspective, again, as the paramount. We will see what's working well, what doesn't work so well. Can we fix that? We will then look at how much we are using our buildings and what our usage is likely to be going forward. So really determining whether it does work or whether it doesn't work for us as an authority. On the basis that it does work or we need to make some adjustments, then there could be key changes that we would need to make in order to put some greater framework around our operating model. So for example, would we need to make any changes to employee terms and conditions and to any of our HR policies? And clearly, if that was the case, they would come to this committee for consideration. Do we then at that point, look at our property strategy? If we are starting to see that our workplace and our office estate is very low usage, then what do we do with that going forward? How are we able to enhance the use of technology in the delivery of what we do? What other learning and support do we need for ourselves, for our staff, for our managers? We're already doing a number of programs for managers and have done all through the pandemic, to be fair, in terms of how you can support and manage your staff when you are working remotely. And that continues to grow and develop, and we get some really good attendance at those sessions. So the current thinking is that we would move to a hybrid model around October, November time, give that a trial for about 3 months, undertake the reviews during that period of time and assess whether it is effective or whether we need to do something different to that. I think a couple of other things to reflect on. I know that the last 18 months obviously has been different in other ways, but we have, for example, seen a reduction in turnover over the last, when you compare the last 2 years, from 13.6% to 11%. Sickness rates has gone down to 5.2 days, and that's one of the lowest averages in the region. Travel expenses has halved, so we've certainly saved a fair amount of money on not driving to meetings around the region. And from a well-being point of view, people are doing okay. We've undertaken a number of staff surveys, and it's shown that, and we do keep asking. I would always caveat that with, we know that in some cases people have not done very well and do not cope and do not like working from home and are very keen to get back into the building. But as I said before, they will be able to do that. And I think the final point I will make again, which is in the paper, our zero carbon target is important to the council. This is one of the biggest ways that employees can contribute to our climate strategy through less commuting. So it is still very much work in progress. We have gone out, we've talked to managers, we've talked to staff. We have favourable support for it. Managers and staff are giving us convincing messages that from a service perspective they can make it work, and they want the opportunity to demonstrate that they can make it work, but also do fully appreciate that we will review, we will assess, and we will adjust as we need to. So I hope that provides a brief summary of perhaps the more detail that's in the paper.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few observations, but I'll start by saying that for 8 years of my time with the Audit Commission, I was a home-based worker, not even a hybrid. My office was my office at home. So I have a lot of experience of working at home in the context of in a world that wasn't home-based, apart from me and my colleagues, and there were about 2,000 of us, I think, nationally, who were home-based. So I do know all the pros and cons. And for me, like many of our colleagues at Rutland, it was a real benefit because, domestically, it's quite nice to be able to whiz out and put your washing on the line while you're thinking about what you're going to write in your next paragraph once you get back to your computer, that sort of practicality. But and I am very pleased to see that we're taking this step by step and doing a cautious approach to new ways of working within Rutland, because I think that's the right thing to do. But I think at some point in time, we are going to have a policy or amendments to a series of policies if we are going to adopt hybrid working as a different way of working, not least to protect our staff and also to give them some of the benefits of being home-based. Because whilst we're saying we're not making allowances for it, and that's right, none of the East Midlands authorities are, in the last I heard, there are tax benefits if you are home-based, but you can't claim those tax benefits if you're still office-based, albeit working at home. It's a different issue. So the contract has to be reflecting what it is, if you see what I mean. So it's things like that. I think from our staff, we've got to regularize this and formalize this at some point, year and a half in the future, whenever is the right time to do it. I also think that we need to make it a longer term decision. And therefore, I think it needs to be primarily, principally, whatever word you like, what is important for the business. So I think the policy needs to be in a two-step. The first step is what's important for the business, how is the business best delivered? If there are roles that it is best delivered because you are there, for example, a librarian, you know, who it would actually be best for the business and the people of Rutland if the librarian is in the library, then we need to be quite clear that there are some roles, name them if we can. I mean, sometimes that'll be, you can't because new roles get created and you don't put them in a policy because they weren't there when you wrote it, sort of thing. But I think it has to be principally the role and the role of the business, not the person. And then I think as a support to that, there needs to be a section about how we treat people within that policy and what the responsibility of the manager is. Clearly, we've got a lot of those in paragraph 4.5. That then gives the opportunity that if the manager is saying to somebody in a role X and the role we've said is Y, they then have some recourse against that if they feel their manager's treating them unfairly. Or if an individual says, oh, well, I think I should be working at home, the manager equally the other way around says, no, actually the principle is this role is 100% office-based, 50% office-based, whatever it might be. And so I think we need to do that. So we have first the role and the business need. And I say second, I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean, it's just a separate strand. I don't mean it's less important. Is then what we have about the rights of the individual. So, for example, we will say to our staff, you have a right, even if your role is 60% home-based, if you want to work 100% office, then you can. It's that type of, and it's as important, but we start with the needs of the business. I'm sorry I went on so long there, Gordon. I got a bit carried away, but I feel quite strongly about that.
Carol, do you want to comment on that?
Sorry?
Sorry, Carol, I was asking Carol if you want to comment on your comments.
No, I think that is absolutely fine, Councillor Waller. I think that is, you know, your tone reflects our thinking and approach. And one of the things I'm showing with one of our teams at the moment is this team charter principle, and it takes the team on a bit of a journey in their discussion that does start from, as you said, you know, how our service is delivered, where do we need to deliver it from, so that there's clear and common understanding and can start dispelling this issue about whether somebody thinks that they can, you know, for example, deliver a librarian service at home compared to the manager saying, well, clearly that's not a delivery from home type of service. So they get that shared understanding, and then they move through this little bit of a journey to look at, well, how do we as a team ensure we deliver what that service requirement is. Where do we need to be? How do we engage as a team and with other colleagues? So yeah, that's absolutely fine. And I think, you know, the two ways you break it down are exactly how we're structuring that model.
Okay, thank you. Rosemary.
Thank you. Just to reinforce that, and I was, you know, absolutely in agreement that the first thing is the delivery of the business and the services, because actually when I read this paper, it might be just a matter of, you know, order and semantics under item 4, and I know these weren't in order, our general principles that started with meet the needs of staff, whereas I felt it should actually start with enable the business and our services to operate, and that's what you said. But the way it's reflected in this paper, that's the second one, whereas it actually should be the primary one. And I'm sure you're obviously, you know, and I totally support this staged approach and everything, and the you know, the dealing with the roles, because as we know, you can get different people in those roles in the future who might have actual different requirements, so that's got to be coped with. I suppose the other area, which I'm sure you're dealing with, it's not just where the job can be done from, but it's actually to enable teams to work effectively. So if the manager needs a team meeting on a certain day, regardless of how many people are working from home, then actually that's a requirement, even for people who all the time work at home. There has to be some requirement, because the risk is that we lose some creativity and interaction if those aren't proper. You know, maybe people still have to come into the office one day in 10 or something like that. I don't know if you're looking at those, not across the board, but according to the teams. Even if you've got somebody who's fully working at home, surely there must be a need, because I'm talking to other people in other businesses, that is what is starting to happen now. Those informal interactions, we're at danger of lose. So, and actually the authority of the manager to be able to request that is a requirement according to the needs of what they're delivering. But that's, you know, but basically, you know, support that hybrid working. And the other thing I was just going to ask, and obviously again the other side of it is, do you feel that the IT and everything is working effectively for people at home? And what about the health and safety of people's sort of workplaces at home? Are you getting involved in that? As I mean, obviously you can't visit everyone's home and do an assessment like you would at a desk, but just wondering how you're addressing that.
First of all, make a further comment in terms of what you were saying about you know, enabling teams to work effectively and a team meeting being a requirement of people to come into the office. And that is certainly one of the examples we're given in this roadmap journey that I mentioned, in terms of how do we as a team need to come together. And we are seeing that, and managers are certainly saying that, yes, I would be, you know, wanting to get my team together once every whatever. So, and the other aspect I would add to that is induction of new staff. As well. I think it's not only important for the new employees to come in and experience the workplace, but they need their work colleagues there as well. And I think for myself, having 2 new joiners in the last month, I can really see that from, you know, a personal perspective about the things that I can't enable them to experience in terms of you know, being in that building with other people in there, because they're just not there. So they don't really get a true sense of the team and the place when you're just working at home. And I think that's important for engagement, for cultural change, for any organisational change and process that you need to go through. You can do some of that remotely, and sometimes you can engage people more remotely because you can get more people into a Teams call than you might if you ask them to attend a meeting. So yeah, totally acknowledge the need for people to come together and engage and be with each other. In terms of IT, we get really good feedback on it. I think as with most of us, we have problems with our own broadbands from time to time. I was due to meet with the chief exec this morning. 5 minutes beforehand, my broadband decides to give up on me, but fortunately it came back 5 minutes later. So I think, you know, we all experience technical problems that, you know, not necessarily something that our IT team can work out. But we are currently doing an audit of kit and equipment, including IT equipment, with what we've got in the office, what we've got at home, so that again, what we can provide by way of kit and equipment does support that hybrid model. So that is certainly part of the work that a group of us are looking at. Health and safety at home, we rolled out the display screen equipment risk assessment very early on last year when we moved people to home working. They were reviewed back end of last year, early this year, and our health and safety officer, Alan Bailey, takes a key role in ensuring managers regularly review DSE risk assessments to ensure that people's working arrangements at home do meet the requirements of that particular risk assessment. And where we've needed to, we have put adjustments in place to support that.
Good, thank you. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to be really very quickly succinct now. I was going to say I welcome this this hybrid model. I thought it was an excellent way forward. There was just just a couple of things, and one was kind of I suppose to dispel the myth and to around whether output has gone down by our staff, because I know there is a myth that if people are at home, their output goes down, and actually I believe it's probably completely the opposite, and people generally work longer hours. But also it's just a recognition that I think looking to the future, that home working and the new kind of way of life, I think, will go forward. And while some of us older people, it's a complete change for us, we mustn't forget that for young people and for the next generations moving forward, it might actually be their normal, and actually we're the transitions, and actually it's to build on that and allow the inclusivity that will come from being able to dictate a service-led approach, obviously, to employment, but also that that would mean that people have some more flexibility within their lives and aren't chained to the 9-to-5 building as previous generations may have been.
And I think, Councillor Harvey, what we're seeing is feedback from parents in particular, in terms of that flexibility and the change that they've been able to make to their home life in terms of childcare and you know, other carer independent support, that they have been able to balance that around their work priorities much better than they could. So for them, although you know their work-life balance has improved because they can literally balance things much better, as opposed to being driven by being in a building 8:30 till 5. So I think that's been a huge benefit. And you mentioned about the myth about being less productive. I think it is a myth. I think I can safely say in the surveys and the discussions we've had with staff and managers, they feel productivity has improved. I think there's something a little bit about a bit less interruptions, can I say, than sometimes that is very pleasant, and it's this balance between having some social interaction with a real person as opposed to being able to sit at your desk at home or your dining room table or wherever and get your head down and get on with work. So it's finding that happy medium. But I think work-life balance generally people do consider is much better. But again, there are some who it does not suit. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions of Carol? Any other comments to be made? Nothing? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Carol. I think the committee will be very interested to hear at each of the meetings how it's developing, and therefore I think this is probably one of the most important pieces of work that we've got over the next 2 years in developing a really comprehensive model for hybrid working across the authority. So thank you for that. Any other items? Let's go back to the agenda. That's item 9. Any other urgent business, Jill?
No, nothing.
No. Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of the meeting at 8:01.
Well done, Gordon.
What a surprise.
Thank you very much, Gordon.
It's all right. Thank you for everyone attending. I appreciate it. And good night. And hope Denmark wins. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Gordon.
It's a Scotsman for
And
you.
so does my husband. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
everybody.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
Thank
Take
you.
care and good
Bye.
night. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.